Without further ado, let me invite, last but not the least, in fact, our most anticipated speaker, Honorable Michael Wood. I don't think he needs an introduction, but it's my duty to tell you a couple of words about him. Michael Wood is the Minister of Transport and Workplace Relations and Safety, Deputy Leader of the House, and MP of Mount Roskill. He was first elected to the parliament in 2016 in a by-election, and while in opposition, he has been Labour spokesman for transport, revenue, and customer affairs. He became Labour's senior whip in mid-2019. Without further ado, Michael Wood.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Good evening all, and thank you, Anand, for your introduction. Thank you, Shailesh, for organising tonight's event with the broader team. It is nice to see you here, Anand. Anand and I periodically meet up together on the 25 bus between Lindfield and the city centre, which we both take into town sometimes.
Good memories.
But obviously, the current circumstances mean there's not so much of that going on. So very good to see you and everyone else. And look, good on all of you for coming together for this forum. I know that we're in challenging times, and I just think it's really admirable that those of you, many in small business, who are perhaps facing those challenging times at the moment, aren't just sort of putting your heads down and feeling bad about it. You're actively engaging with one another, reaching out, seeking to learn and share ideas about how you can become more resilient. I just want to pick up, firstly, can I also acknowledge my two other panelists, Shanice and Bronnie, and say that I found your contributions really, really interesting. And yeah, Bronnie said something that was really on point, which is that, yeah, effectively there's an important role for everyone here in the system, but ultimately it's you who know your business. And for us in government, we can't solve all of the problems. We're not the ones who have the expertise about how to best run your business. But there is a role for all of us to work together to try and create a thriving and successful economy and society. In the comments that I make, I just want to really touch on a couple of areas. The first is to just give a bit of a sense about the current environment and what we're likely to face over the next couple of years, which perhaps sets the scene for why resilience is so important and is going to continue to be so important for businesses small and large, in fact. And then a few comments about a little bit about what the role of government can be in working with you and other businesses to ensure that we do have as much resilience as possible across our system. The first thing I would say is that very often when I'm speaking with business audiences, I know that what business is really keen on is certainty. And I think what is particularly challenging about the current moment is that if we're going to be really honest with you, and we should, uncertainty is the new normal. And I don't think that anyone in politics or government can promise you certainty in the coming period. We are living in very challenging times. We obviously have the COVID pandemic right in front of us at the moment. And whereas perhaps at the beginning of this year, many of us felt that by the end of this year, we might be seeing a pretty quick transition back to a reconnected world where things were quite a lot more normal than they were. Most of the evidence that is before us is that we're going to face a relatively long period of COVID disrupting us in one way or another. As a government, we do believe that it is important that we find ways to reconnect with the world as we get that vaccination rate up really, really high, and that's going to help a lot. But things are still going to be strained, things are still going to be difficult, the reconnection is going to take some time, and there are ongoing risks because of the virus. Now, we're currently dealing with Delta, a variant that arose about 6 months ago initially. It's possible that we'll deal with new variants in the future that might change things again. And I don't say any of this to depress people or make people feel worried, but I guess just to convey that reality that I think we are going to need to continue to work together across private sector, public sector, community to brace ourselves to the reality of that uncertainty and to get ourselves into a space that is resilient as possible. On top of that, we do face other challenges which will require us to be resilient because of the inherent uncertainty that they create. We're living in quite choppy geopolitical times. We are seeing emerging conflict between China and the United States. We've already seen some impacts there in terms of global flows of trade. We face a global supply chain at the moment, which primarily because of COVID is extremely stretched. And those of you who are involved in import and export activities, or building in particular, will be painfully aware of that at the moment. And the estimates are that it's probably going to take a couple of years before we fully see our way through that, back to more normal, more reliable trade flows as well. We face other changes which have been moving for quite a bit longer, but perhaps have been accelerated by the current conditions. For example, the rapid acceleration of the digital economy and of people choosing to engage online for the goods and services that they want in their lives. I think I might have said the last time that you had one of these gatherings, Shailesh, that at my house over the course of this lockdown, we've had a box arrive on our front doorstep nearly every day from things that my wife's been ordering to keep our household going. And I think that's going to be a reality of the way that we move forward. And that's going to pose challenges to some of the business models that people have got very used to over the years. So this change and this uncertainty are going to be with us. And I think businesses who want to be successful are going to need to sort of factor that in, rather than imagining that very quickly it's just sort of going to go back to how it was back in 2019. And I think that's probably, as I can't give you individual business advice, but that is something that I think I would recommend that people really think about and reflect upon in terms of how they develop resilient businesses. The second thing that I want to touch on is that concept of relationships. And I think that's one of the things that we can really, really be proud of in New Zealand over the past 18 months, because actually our track record as a country over the most disruptive period that we have had, and I'll say this really clearly, since the Second World War, has been that we have shown across our business sector and our society that we are pretty resilient. There have been people who have hurt along the way. There have been businesses that haven't made it through. But compared to so many places around the world, people and businesses and communities have found ways of adapting and supporting one another and making it through these challenging times. And I do think a lot of that has been about the fact that we have been good on the relationship front. I'll give an example from today. Today I was in a meeting with senior business leaders from Business New Zealand and some of New Zealand's major companies, the Council of Trade Union and other key union leaders, with the government, and what we call a Future of Work Forum. And this is a forum that we have had going for several years, in which we have all of us together, business unions representing workers and government, working together on some of the big challenges that we face, that shift to a digital economy. That's what that's going to mean for the workforce. We're thinking about things, and I mentioned this again last time, like the concept of social unemployment insurance, so that if people lose their jobs or small businesses don't make it through some of these challenging times, we can have a greater steadiness of income for people in those times. So we're at a sector level, we've got pretty good relationships. We sometimes argue about individual policies, but we've got the ability to work things through. In the small business world, I've seen amazing, what I can only call solidarity between communities and local small businesses, where people have really felt strongly that it's important to go out there when we get out of level 4 and get down to level 3 and go and support the local small businesses as much as possible. I've seen great relationships, often but not always, between small businesses and their landlords, where they've come to really fair arrangements about how to get through these challenging times. So I do just think that's a great strength, which has helped so many people and so many businesses to get through, the fact that there are strong relationships in place across our communities. And I think that is a real key to resilience. Very often it is hard to get through by yourself, but if you've got networks and relationships and trusted people in your personal life, mentors, other businesses, partners in government that you can work with, then that gives you a lot more to fall back on. So I think that's something to really invest in and think about as well. So look, those are probably the key comments that I'll offer. I think, as I signaled, Shailesh, I actually do have to head off fairly shortly to my next Zoom meeting. But I just leave you with those two things. What I think is probably the reality. People are going to need to be resilient given the uncertainty that we face in coming years. The importance of good relationships to make sure that we can get through those challenging times. And if I can just confirm at the end of all of that the role that we see, that there's a positive role for government in those relationships. Our government does believe in being active and partnering. one of the ways that we have gotten through this period has been through that exactly. At the beginning of COVID, Grant Robertson said that, that we couldn't run everyone's business, we couldn't solve every problem, we couldn't save every job, but we could make sure that there was, he said, cash flow and confidence were the two key things that we could provide. And those have been really key to helping many people get through. So let's keep up those relationships between private and public sector and community. And I've got a great sense of confidence and optimism that we can build a really resilient business sector and a resilient Aotearoa New Zealand. So thanks again for the opportunity to say a few words, and really hope the rest of the discussion goes well.
Yes, no, thanks very much. I pick up on Bronnie's statement, and I love the way of resilience that we are here to talk about. When she mentioned tools to explore, there are a lot of tools which Anand also picked up, and there is a lot of tools which are free and which, as you mentioned in my last meeting as well, the digital boost and the digital area that people can register for free. But then picking up on that, and then the prevention strategies for these uncertainties time, which I picked up from Bronnie's statement, and then prioritizing. And then I picked up from you relationships and the networking and the government relationships with the businesses and small businesses. So resilience is definitely, these are the two kings, and being in the area of business advisory, and I really appreciate all the people who have come here as small businesses. Have definitely must have helped a lot about this information that we have passed on. But moving forward and going with this, as we have always shown the resilient factor, when you mention about the World War, and after that, this is the most challenging times that we are having all. I wanted to ask Michael, is like, what's the best strategy at this moment? There is no strategy as such where we can say that this works or that works, but it's all trial and error that we are doing, but we are just supporting each other to do that. And forums like that is one of the key things that I wanted to bring this and engage. But I wanted to make it further and see how government can come with these tools that Bronnie was mentioning, and the prevention where the government can play a little part of supporting the businesses for preventing their uncertain times and prioritizing these businesses. So really some of the key areas that I take it, like I wanted to just highlight that government, it would be good to see some of the policies and strategies can be worked around for small businesses by the current government and the future, that we are going to be in this for a long time and we don't know how much. But definitely it's a workaround processes that we could come along and bring some policies into that. As you mentioned about the social insurance policy and business insurance policies. So those kind of things definitely will help. But we just wanted to see how we can communicate that more faster to these businesses so that they can become more confident and resilient in that area. That is my question is for you, to pass on the informations through your ministerial, various government agencies to develop these relationships with the small businesses.
Look, thanks, Shailesh. I think it's a point that's really well made. There's actually a surprising amount out there in terms of sources of advice and support, and sometimes people aren't really aware of where to go. So the Honourable Stuart Nash, who's our Minister for Small Business, who we actually had I was going to bring him to Mount Roskill. This was last month, and that couldn't happen. We had a little online session with him. Has been working quite hard over the last year or so to really set up much stronger channels, both through brokers, through advisory services, through really clear information that can alert people to the support that's available out there. And we can circulate some of that around, Shailesh, if that would be helpful, because there is a lot there. And again, it's not about saying that government can fix every problem or do everything. In the end, you people are the brains and the brawn of your own businesses who know best how to make your way through. But there are ways that we can work together to provide support, particularly at challenging times.
Thanks very much. You can take over now, Anand.
And with that, I'll say my farewell as I head off to my next meeting. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you,
Michael. Thank you so much, Michael, for your great insights once again. And as I always like you to get invited for different topics to talk about, but also give us the reality check each time. And the more we engage with the government, as you rightly pointed out, would be much better to have that confidence in the business communities. Yeah. Cool. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.